right, Mr. Chair, you are now live.
We're live. The Board of Port Wardens to come to order. I'm Gene Godley, the chair. We have with us Willie Sampson, the vice chair, John Butler, Scott Anderson, and Robert Shapiro. We're also fortunate to have Tammy Hook, who is our recording secretary, Carrie Berger, assistant city attorney, Kevin Scott, with us. So before you have the agenda. Can I have a motion that we approve the agenda for tonight?
Make a motion to approve.
I'd like to second that motion.
Move, all in favor, aye?
Well,
Aye.
I have a question about the agenda. I approve that. I'm already looking at the notes, sorry.
That's okay.
I on the agenda.
Okay,
Yeah.
Unanimous that the agenda is approved. We're now moving to the minutes for March the 23rd. I've reviewed them, have no concerns. Does anyone have a concern or a motion?
My concern, and it was more, I was focusing on this more for the findings of fact, but now as I look at the minutes, for Port 2020-023, the entire paragraph of the minutes is about Mr. Hartman's, what he spoke about. I think there was more content than that. I realize we don't need to have, a lot of detail with all that was said in the minutes, but when we get to the findings of fact, I'm not even sure how relevant that was to the findings of fact, but it did occur at the meeting, and I understand, so it's captured in the minutes, but there were other things in the minutes that could be captured just as well, I think.
Do you have a suggestion for that? I mean,
without going back,
it doesn't matter what the minutes, they don't have to relate to the findings.
right.
But
I just, maybe a comment that maybe shorten that paragraph about Mr. Hartman's, and just there were other, I don't remember what the other, I think Sally Nash had something to say, Dr. Nash, and
John, how about if we say the Board of Port Wardens deliberated on the application and moved into the vote after hearing comments from Mr. Hartman and Sally Nash. And others.
Also, the attorney for Gary Perlin. Yeah.
Then why don't we just, after hearing from, and just list the people that that we heard from, and then we don't have to actually transcribe what they actually said.
That makes sense to me.
I move that as an amendment to to 2020-023, that we curtail that second paragraph, eliminate that full paragraph, and just amend the opening sentence, so that moving to the vote, comma, after hearing comments from, and the list Hartman, Nash, I guess it's Shaler, and anyone else that made a comment. So is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Move second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. So with that amendment, can I have a motion that we adopt the minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the minutes.
Move.
Oh.
Second. All in favor, aye? Aye. The minutes are approved. We now move to the findings of fact, and there's one finding of fact, which is the Perham application 2020-023. The findings are to my satisfaction. Do I have any comments or a motion?
I have comments. On page 3, the full paragraph near the bottom, I'm just not sure how that paragraph relates to the findings of fact. I'm not sure how it's relevant. I think it was kind of in response to me bringing up Title 15 questions, but Title 15 isn't about riparian rights. In fact, in a creek like this, you have a lot of overlap of riparian rights. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not expert on riparian rights, but I think that's the case. And Title 15 is a mechanism to kind of divide up the waterway and delineate developable waterway. And I believe the questions I was asking was about that. And I also believe that there were, legitimate questions. And by putting this big paragraph in there from Mr. Hartman, I think we're giving too much weight to those questions he raised that aren't really relevant to our findings. They're not really relevant to what we were discussing, in my opinion.
John, would you accept an amendment of that paragraph to simply read, the March 23rd meeting was also conducted virtually. Mr. Hartman spoke on behalf of Blue Heron Condominiums. And
Yes.
eliminate the rest.
Yes, and eliminate the rest. And then there was some commentary that I think is more relevant that would be good to capture in the findings. And that was, I believe, Ms. Berger and you, Dean, asserted that since the easement had not been recorded, it didn't exist. And so there was this discussion about the new city code and regarding easements and water access to the harbor line. And I believe that those statements were made. I think Sally Nash made some statement about the easement, and then there was an assertion that since it hadn't been recorded, and maybe the attorney for, I'm not sure who made those assertions. I know there was more than one assertion that the easement didn't exist since it hadn't been recorded, which is a little, I know the plat has the words for the easement in it. For me, I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand this, but I know there were, I had assertions from that the easement didn't exist. And that, I think that's relevant to the findings of fact.
Well, I tried to capture that in saying that the the project does not impede navigable access from any existing proximate point of public property or easement. Sally Nash, in her testimony, said that the easement had not been perfected. So I didn't opine myself at all on either riparian rights or the easement. It's just that it was admitted by Sally Nash that there was no easement.
Okay, so you were just referring back to her comment.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
hard
not,
well, I think in response to some question I was asking, I think Ms. Berger said, that if we had an easement, that would be relevant, but in this case, we didn't have an easement, something like that.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I guess you're right. You captured that under point 3, but I don't know if we need to just capture that in context of that meeting, that kind of came up in the March 23rd meeting, because that's the sequence there is relevant to that was after the ordinance had come up, had been passed.
well, I'm happy to.
But I don't know what the right words are, because without going back and listening to the meeting, I guess. But
Well, I think I have to, Kevin, Scott helped tremendously in this, and he actually listened to the transcript. So, I'm more than happy to say that, March 23rd meeting was conducted virtually. Mr. Hartman spoke on behalf of Blue Heron Condominiums, and Sally Nash indicated that the easement, had not been perfected. If that helps you. Otherwise, you're going to have to give us a draft.
yeah, so could I? This doesn't have to be approved today, right? We can do it the next meeting. I'm just wondering if I could go listen to the recording and just see.
Yeah, you don't have to approve the findings tonight. You have 60 days from the vote to approve the findings. I would make sure that if you want to include that language, that you're very specific about that language, because I think my recollection is that it was referencing a public access easement, not an easement itself. So making sure that that's clear in the findings, but you do have 60 days from the date of the vote.
Well, because it was discussed in that meeting and because it seems to be relevant to the findings, I'd like to take the time. I'll find the time to, when I'm on the boat, to listen to that and try to find what the proper words are there, rather than just try to put something together this evening.
Okay, why don't we postpone the vote on these findings until next month. I so
Thank you.
move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, we postponed it. But John, if, having spent some time doing this, I would appreciate, any kind of, you're doing any kind of drafting that you think is appropriate. So we don't go into the 7th and 8th month on this.
Yes. Can I, so when I get something, do I send it to Carrie? Do I?
You can send it to Kevin, and Kevin can send it out to the Port Wardens. It would be considered a deliberative draft, so it wouldn't necessarily have any sort of communications, wouldn't necessarily fall under the potential Open Meetings Act violation or anything like that. If you send the draft for people's review and people can weigh in on it and make comments on it, but that's all fine and well.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay,
Thanks.
I appreciate that. So the board is unanimous in postponing the approval of the findings of fact on 2020-023 until next month. So
And it's not holding up any construction, so that's good.
that's true. That's true. I think that's true.
And it's not going to change the findings. It's just going to make it more clear what the findings are.
Yeah, and it's not going to change their approval of the application.
Approval, that's what I mean.
Yeah, that's, so I'm, perfecting the findings. I think it's good because as Carrie has admonished or warned us, or, is we need to be careful in our deliberation. And this is frankly the one finding that I have participated significantly in drafting, although I couldn't have done it without Kevin. So moving to old business, we have before us the applications of last month, and let's take them one at a time. The Stinson 004 on Norwood Road. There's been no additional testimony submitted or submissions.
Gene, I did send to the board the lateral line exhibit from the applicant. I don't see the applicant on the meeting tonight or their consultant.
For Norwood Road?
For Norwood Road. Yeah, Norwood Road. I didn't get any public comments, but you got this lateral line exhibit by email that the board asked for?
Yes, and I did look at that, Kevin. I had some questions. Unfortunately, they're not on the call, huh? Because I'm not sure what this is showing.
Well, they're showing the right of way of Essex Road, and then they've got the lateral lines, both. So from the point where Essex Road boundary touches their property, they've got that lateral line, and then the point where the Essex Road boundary touches the next property over, they've got that lateral line, and then they start to converge, and when they get to the point where it would be 25 feet, the angle of the line changes to maintain 25 feet out to the harbor line.
So what I think what I'm looking at is the 60 line with 60 degrees marked on it, and the shoreline, so that's the right of way. There's a line, I think that line is marked 60 degrees, and then there's a long line, which I guess I'm not sure it goes to the next property. I think it goes, it's supposed to go to where the property intersects the water, and there's that lake, so I guess it probably goes to the edge of the Severn River or whatever. But that's the one that's marked 252 degrees, right? So those are the two lines on, connecting shore points that would be bisected to make the lateral line. Is that correct? Is that your understanding?
Yeah, that's right. So the subject property and the right-of-way line is one of the lines, and then the right-of-way line and the property on the other side of the right-of-way. The other side of the property that's on Shady Lake is so far around the corner of this peninsula into that cove, it's irrelevant to this application. So we're just looking at this one point.
I would buy that, and I don't know the length.
They just bisected these two angles and they extended it out. They show the lateral line setbacks, and then they maintain the 25 foot claim. So they're so far away from this project. It's really a academic exercise here.
Well, so when you when you extend, so when you bisect that, the property line with the south 5835 on it, that to me appears to bisect the, when you look at it on the other side of those two lines, it appears to me to bisect it. And it's not in line with the lateral line that they drew. So if they were here, if the engineer was here, I could ask them about that, but it does not appear. So, and Ms. Berger has advised us not to, you know, kind of set the lateral lines aside. You're right. I'm not sure, you know, if they drew it on there the way it seems like it should be drawn, I think they're still going to have room for the setback, but I just don't think that that lateral line represents Title 15. You see what I'm saying? That when I look at it with my eye, the property line seems to actually be pretty close to a bisection of those two lines. The angle between the 60 degrees in the property line and the 252 degrees in the property line seems to be about equal. And that does not line up with the lateral line.
So John, would you like to postpone this till next month until we can get the applicant to explain to you their
Well, I tell you what, Gene, if you wouldn't mind just delaying it to the end of the meeting, I'm going to shoot the engineer a text and see if he can get on the meeting. If you're okay with that, maybe we can circle back to this.
If John's okay, because
that sounds good. Yeah, I'd like to get this resolved.
A question to be answered, and no one can answer it. So,
all right, I'm not sure
it's
why I didn't join.
that either we get him answered or we postpone it. So, for the time being, let's lay this application on the table and move to the Lars and Gay Henriksen. And we do have, I'm sorry, I couldn't find that submission myself, but we do have a submission on the lateral lines for this. And John, I think, again, you asked Dan Lyrian to prepare this. And before proceeding, I want to be sure this satisfies your concerns.
I see Dan is with us now. And I do have a question there. Nothing's labeled, so I want to make sure I understand what I'm seeing. So, and I'm mostly interested in the northernmost corner. And I see, I guess the two white lines are there's a white line going across, you know, there's a city park property there, I guess. And that white line that kind of goes across there, that's going point to point. And then there's another line that goes from that same point along the shore to, I guess, the corner of the next property. So that makes sense. I think those are the two lines that you would bisect to make the lateral line. And then the lateral line is the white line that comes out into the water. And the only thing, and it could be just an optical illusion based on looking at the different, you know, the pier in there. But that, to me, again, it doesn't look like it bisects it. It looks like it's a more acute angle on the side towards the park than the side towards the property. And that's just me looking at it visually. I don't know if any of the other wardens can see what I'm talking about, whether you see that same apparent difference in angle. The angle should be exactly the same on the left and the right of that lateral line between the lateral line and those shore white lines on the shore.
I can see that. And Dan, you're on. Do you swear to tell the truth to the port wardens to the best of your ability upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay. Can you answer John's question, because
maybe the scale.
I see what he's talking about.
John, maybe the scale is so small it exaggerates what you're seeing, but I did the calculation, and that's the way it laid out as shown.
Interesting.
But John,
well,
if you assume, and my perception is the same as yours on the we got, but if you assume that bisection, a line that bifurcates the triangle, if you assume that moved over, I don't know, give it 20%, the pier would still be within the lateral lines, right?
This is existing that we're looking at. So it's an application for a
boat lift.
A lift.
Yep.
It would. I think it might make them have to move the lift back a little. I'm not sure.
Well,
again,
you'll see the closest pile, John, is about 2 feet off the setback. So it's 7 feet from the proposed lateral line. So even if we shifted it towards the pile, the furthest most pile on the pier, it's still, you know, Gene's saying 20%, it still probably would allow that pile to be within the setback. But again, the 15 feet could be 14 feet. I don't think we want to go any further towards the land because of the shallowness of the water. And, you know, we've got an outfall structure there that I don't know if you've ever been by there on a rainstorm, but it is totally like chocolate milk. I mean, it is filling in that slip faster than we can keep up with it. We've got a dredging permit, but we're limited to the 3-foot contour. So the dredging will occur about where that first lift pile is towards shore and then dredge from there out to meet the 5-foot contour. But I'll adjust it however you want, but I think we got plenty of room to fit it there, John.
Well, can you do that? So you say you have an engineering drawing that does this lateral line more accurately. I'd like to see, I mean.
Yeah, well, this drawing is
Gene sees the same visual, you know, difference that I'm seeing. And so, you know, I'd like to think that we're not making a lateral line fit the development. And so if you have an engineering drawing that lays it out more accurately, maybe we need to see that.
Yeah, well, I think the 1 inch equals 100 feet damps the scale down so bad that it, you know, any little change, even the width of the pencil line exaggerates things. If you go to the drawing number 5, 1 inch equals 30 feet, you'll see that the lateral line that I drew on the permit application matches, as best as I can tell, sheet number 7 that we presented to you after the fact. But again, it's just, you know, with property lines and lateral lines, it's an exact science, but it's not as exact as you would do a boundary survey, for example, because we're in the water, so it's a little tricky. But there's certainly enough room with that 15 feet on the gauge of that lift. I mean, we might be able to back it up towards shore a little bit and narrow that down to maybe 14.5 feet. But
well, the other thing is, if you know, if you're constrained and that's a city park, I don't know if this is how the city would feel about giving permission to encroach on the setback, but that, you know, the adjacent property owner can always.
We don't want to do that. I mean, we've got existing piles that are already over, you know, you see that one pile out there all the way on the end that exists.
But the existing pile doesn't let you build a lift connected to it.
No, it's not a square grid. It's not a square grid, John. So we need like a.
I mean, having an existing pile doesn't allow you to say, now we're going to build a lift because the pile exists, even if you have to replace the pile in place. We have to have the setback. We've improved the waterfront is what I'm saying by putting the lift where it is and not trying to capture that pile that's out there in no man's land. So I don't see how it infracts the park, in all honesty, because the plane of the pier is 30 feet in front of the lift. And, you know, if you were coming out of that park, you'd have to run into the pier before you could run into the lift. But anyway, that's just an opinion. Yeah, and those are all fine, but, you know, we are supposed to enforce Title 15, which includes a pretty clear description of lateral lines. And I know sometimes those can be challenging to construct, but to my eye, this line doesn't bisect the angle between those two lines, and that part of Title 15 isn't ambiguous. And you know, I understand you're trying to make this, you know, this project go forward and work, and it, you know, you're just attaching it to an existing pier, but I just feel like we need to have Title 15 supported through this, that we, you know, we don't push this forward with a lateral line submission that to our eye that doesn't look correct.
Okay, so what do you actually want me to show on the drawing to show that we did the bisection?
The angles being the same, what the angle is.
Okay.
And
I might be able to email it to Kevin right now and call my draftsman and get him to do it right now. If that you want me to come back to this at the end of the meeting?
See if you can, and if not, we'll postpone till next meeting for you to provide the information to Kevin, who will provide it to the board.
Okay.
And John, let me say, I agree visually, and maybe it's a matter of scale of this, but even if that line were to intersect with the second pier piling back, it still doesn't seem to, the angles don't seem to be equal. But given the fact that we're dealing with very small scale, maybe a larger scale with the, I guess actually with the measurement of the angles would be helpful. So I move we lay this on the table to further in the meeting. And if we don't have the information by then we will postpone it till next month until we can get it. That's
Okay.
Is that okay, John?
I'll
Is that
put it on.
It is, and Dan, I do have a question because based on what you were just saying, I'm not sure if you were applying. So there's an existing piling that you need to remove because it won't support the lift, but is the piling for the lift going to be in that same
No,
location or?
We're not removing any of those piles.
Oh, okay.
Because we were granted permission to replace those piles in kind, and the owner wants to leave them as a way to fend the boat off when he comes into that slip, to kind of force him into the lift slip. I mean, that's kind of what you use them for.
So when you're drawing 5, I don't see those existing piles, which would help kind of also with the question we're looking at, you know.
Yeah, they're on there. If you look on drawing 5, at the 5-foot contour and the lateral line is closest to the park, just ahead of that, you'll see a round little circle about 5 feet.
Oh, yes, that's the, right. That's the one even with the end of the pier. Okay. And then, but there's one in from the pier.
Right. Let me see if I can.
Oh, I think I see that. It's right on the lateral line.
Yeah, it's right on the lateral line. I
do see it.
I can enhance those piles so they're darker, so they're easier to define. There's a lot of stuff going on there. It's almost at the 4-foot contour.
Yeah. So it may be that the lateral line is actually shifted on drawing 5 related to, as opposed to, you know, if you could put you have the 200-foot line, I think, on drawing 5, but this is what came up, in fact, in the previous meeting, is you didn't have a line, the 200-foot line, you didn't have the line going over to the other property on drawing 5.
Okay.
You only have the 200-foot line.
So that's what we produced is drawing 7 to show how we calculated the lateral lines coming down the shoreline. But I think if we change the scale to a 30 scale and blow this up and show you those degrees, it'll be easier for you to see it.
And you could put it, I'm suggesting actually, now that you brought my attention to the 1 to 30 drawing 5, maybe just go on there and highlight. It's hard to see all the different black on white lines, but maybe
yeah, we can do that in a different
highlighting
color.
the lines on there.
We will.
And that might just resolve it pretty straightforward.
Yeah, if I can't do it tonight, we'll get it to you as soon as possible. But I'll try to get it here in the next half hour. I've got a phone call into him right now. Hopefully you can hold on.
okay?
All right, thanks.
John, I made a motion. Do you want to second that we postpone it to the end of the meeting or
Second.
next month? Okay, all in favor? The motion? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, now moving to, sorry, tied up in paperwork here. Old Town Marina. I don't think we have any additional submissions. And if not, do I have any discussion? Anyone have any concerns about this? I don't. So that being the case, I make a motion that we approve 2021-003 Old Town Marina.
Second.
Make a motion.
Move, second it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. We now move to 2021-002, the Widener Burrows, 920 Creek Drive. Again, I don't think, Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we have any additional submissions on this. Our testimony.
No, we do not.
So does anyone have any concerns? I found no concerns either with navigation, environment, or so I would make a motion that we approve this. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
And thanks, Scott. Been moved, seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Next is 2021-005, the Ismail Living Trust at 940 Creek Drive. Scott, no additional submission of testimony on this one, right? Okay, so there's not, I'm sorry, Kevin Scott, so I'm sorry, Kevin. So
No,
there's
there's no additional,
no additional, any
no additional
concerns?
materials or testimonies.
Thank you. Any concerns? I found nothing wrong with navigation, environmental concerns. So with that, I make a motion, we approve this. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
See the screen, it's unanimous. So that is approved. So we now move to new business, and we have 4 sort of interrelated applications, all on Southgate Court. So, and I guess Scott Milkey will be presenting on these. Is that true, Scott?
Yes, I'm
Yes,
trying to get
Scott
my,
Milkey. And I also forwarded you all the letter of no objection for all 4 of these. So you should have that.
I have a question about that, Scott, Kevin, because I don't have that in front of me. Was that no objection from each of these applicants? I couldn't,
Scott Milkey can explain it in more detail, but this is part of the Southgate Harbor condominium. It's an overall plan development. So it's from the homeowners association for no objection for all 4 of the applications.
and included within that is 7 Southgate Court. Is that in the association also? That's the
Yes.
property on the corner.
yes, it is.
And I asked that because obviously one of the floats is installed on that property, across the lateral line on that property. Okay. That being the case, Scott, would you swear to tell the truth to the court wardens to the best of your ability upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay. Why don't you, I guess we'll have to consider them one by one, but why don't you explain the concept, and then we'll go through one by one for any kind of questions.
Okay, well, the the Southgate Harbor Condo Association actually owns all these, the whole bulkhead and all the piers, which each pier is assigned to a unit that sits in front of that particular applicant. So that's why I drew separate lateral lines and setbacks and everything, but technically it's all owned by one condo association with an assignment for each pier to each unit.
So technically, the homeowners association itself is the applicant for all of these?
Technically, yes.
Well, if they're the owner of the property, they have to be.
Yes. It's kind of murky because they own the bulkhead and then the people own the condominiums themselves. I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of a gray area when it comes to the waterway thing.
But the reality is we're only concerned with from the bulkhead toward the water. We have no authority over the land side.
Correct.
So to me, the HOA has to be the applicant since they're the owner of the property. Okay, continue.
Now, do you want me to go through each one individually or just kind of go through the whole thing? Because I kind of put it all in one drawing. So each application almost looks the same, but it just obviously we're moving on to a different unit. We could start with the Mighty Five LLC, which is unit number 1. That's at the bottom of your page. I would go to page 3 probably of the application of
Is
that
that the
drawing.
colored drawing?
Yes, of the drawing, sir.
No, the colored one is the existing piers. So that would be the drawing after that.
Correct.
I have a question on that one,
Okay.
Scott, and that is on the proposed pier replacement, you show 1 float. On the colored, the previous exhibit before that, it looks like there are 2 additional floats. How many floats, I guess floating platform?
They excuse me, they are shown on the proposed. It's just kind of hard to see them, and they're not being replaced. They're just remaining in their location. So they're not, anything that's new or being replaced, I darkened the lines on to make it clear what was being replaced and what was existing and staying. So if you look, those floats are still there. They're just not being replaced.
So how many square feet of floats does that property have?
I couldn't tell you, to be honest with you. I'd have to add all that up. They've all previously been permitted, from what I understand from the homeowner.
Kevin Scott, do you know if that's true or not?
Yeah, they're all previously existing. The one that's closest to the south gate, the larger of the two, was one that the board approved, I think last year. I think they changed it from a float to a jet dock, with the same dimensions, and MDE signed off on all that.
Okay, all right,
And the square footage rule is a MDE rule. It's not a city rule.
I understand. I have no further questions on this application. Is anyone else?
I do.
John, go ahead.
Scott, if you could describe how the lateral line between Southgate Avenue and the condominium, how you constructed that.
The Southgate Avenue, I drew a line between one side of Southgate and the other. And then from the corner of the bulkhead over to the line between unit 1 and unit 2. And then a bisection of that angle is what I did.
So I guess this makes, so you ignore, so there, what confused me about this whole thing, and it shows differently on the different drawings, but there's that little triangle piece of land. Like, is that fill or, I mean, and is Southgate filled out there? So Southgate extends beyond the property.
That's correct. And this was actually surveyed by Drumlick and Associates, so it's extremely accurate.
So, I mean, so technically where's the corner of the property? Where's the condominium property end and Southgate Avenue begin?
Right at the point of that bulkhead where it breaks.
Not, so in the right angle or up at the beginning, at the end of the triangle?
At the end of the triangle.
Yeah, so the pointy end of the triangle.
Yes, sir.
So then technically the line going, well, and then I guess what's not clear, as Gene said, do we treat this all as one property? Because the bulkhead's all the condominium association. So the line should really go 200 feet or I don't know, how, is the whole condominium frontage, is that less than 200 feet?
No, it's 25, 50, 100, 50. From the end of Natalie Beatty's point of land there,
yeah,
where it turns hard back into the cove, that's 200 feet over, yeah. Approximately 200, okay. Maybe a little more.
So, but that's not part of the condominium, right?
That is part of the condominium.
Oh, it is the one on the corner?
Number 7, yes, sir.
Oh, okay, so then, geez, technically the lateral lines, I guess, if it's all one piece of property, really, in terms of Title 15, it seems like. You drew the lateral lines between the individual units, but that's unclear to me whether or not that's significant or not, and we have that letter, but they don't actually own, even if they own these slips, do the owners own the slips?
They actually own their own piers. They have to pay and maintain their own piers.
They pay a fee, but they don't have a title. They don't own it.
I don't know that. I can't answer that.
Because I have a condominium with a community slip, and we pay, and it's a common element. We pay a fee to use it, but it's not, we don't own it. Whereas in Severn House, people own the slips and they have a title. So it all varies. But it sounds like, since you said the condominium owns the bulkhead, I would assume they own the condominium owns the piers, because that's where the fast land is owned by the condominium association. But I don't know. These things we don't know.
Yeah, this was,
That's what's confusing to me.
Ed Hartman developed this property back in the early 80s, I believe. And this is like referring a title attorney to decipher, but I've done almost every permit in here for many years over the years, all the way back to early 90s. And this was always kind of how Frank always made me do it. So I've just kind of stuck with the same rules because we have so many cases that were approved through the port wardens with these lateral lines. And if anything, they've got more accurate just because I've had survey and now I have GPS and satellite and everything else. So it really helps out now to get this thing right on the money.
So if I was to assume that it's all one ownership in terms of because of the bulkhead, then the ladder line would go 200 feet out. I mean, not the ladder line wouldn't go, but the shore-based line that generates the ladder line would go 200 feet out from that point between Southgate Ave. Anyway, I mean, that to me that's unclear. But if it goes just to the end of Southgate 1, you know, that goes back at an angle. And again, I'm not. You have the proposed pier is supposed to exist in place, but the ladder line wouldn't go straight out from Southgate Avenue, I don't think.
It does not. It skews off to the north. It's exactly correct. I can 100% testify to that. It's the bisection of the angle between the two. It's just, it does not go straight out. Now,
Well,
back in the day, Frank used to make it go straight out, but I did it the correct way.
Yeah. Well, if you could generate the lines that it's bisecting
Okay.
to provide to us, that would be useful to
Okay.
kind of show that because I'm having a hard time visualizing that. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, John, pursuant to what you were talking, if in truth they own, the HOA owns the property, then we really only have to concern ourselves with two lateral lines.
That's correct.
One at the south, one at the north, and the one at Southgate Avenue is the only crucial one, you know, for this application.
Right. And then, of course, Title 15, if that point of land is less than 200 feet, then it's actually going to even wrap around that corner where you connect the shoreline. There's a line that goes between property points. So I don't know where the 200-foot radius is.
Can I step away for a second? I'm going to go get my scale.
Yeah, he was guessing on the distances based on the, looking at the drawing. And
well, we need that lateral line, whether it's one property or several properties, because that lateral line is the most crucial one we're talking about in all of this.
Right.
I mean, the other ones, if you have a no objection letter to everybody, although it is.
John, it's 295 feet to the corner.
Good. I assume that makes it a lot easier then. Then if you, well, I think if it goes out 200 feet, but again, so this is going to remain open anyway. If you can just generate the drawing that shows the ladder line computation, this is making more sense.
Yeah, I can do that. I usually put that on, but in this situation, it got so daggone tight and busy in there. It was hard to put that together.
You could do a drawing which doesn't have all the detailed docs.
Yeah, I can do that.
Just to do the ladder line. And we're only concerned about the ladder line at Southgate Ave because it's unclear to us what's the how Title 15 applies to these these individual properties, or is it really the one wrapped around the corner, which isn't relevant to this application anyway.
Right. Okay. That can be done. So I'll just bring that next month, or provide it ahead of time for you.
Scott,
and I'll make sure that I'm on the meeting next month. Actually, I have another case coming in, so I'll be on anyway.
John, I have one other comment, but I don't want to cut you off.
Well, I just was thinking, kind of following up the discussion we had about what's the ownership? I mean, is it possible to get an answer to the question of, do they own these slips, or are they just, leasing them for a fee from the condominium association, and get clarification on that?
I can get that information too.
I mean, they actually own the condominium, and that's, reflected, would be reflected on the property records, but I don't know that they own the slips, in which case that would kind of confirm what we're saying, is that there's really only 2 ladder lines.
Who's in charge of putting people on and off in this meeting?
We're here. We're here.
Just Brigida does that.
Is Michael Beatty a guest for
Yes.
the last case, I believe? Number 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you make him live?
Board right now. We have a couple other hands raised with questions from
They can probably answer these
Fields
questions for you.
and John Seda. Do you want to just bring them all in for this?
Yeah, that would be great. There you go, John. You're getting all your answers right away.
Gene will have to swear them in before we do
Yeah.
anything.
Yep. Let me know when they're all in.
All right. I see Franklin Fields, Mike's in, and
John said,
John, yeah.
Don stayed. Yeah. Okay, to everyone that just joined us, will you please raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth to the court wardens to the best of your ability upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
I heard everyone say yes. John, you want to continue, or Scott, were you?
let's let Scott.
Line of question and try to clarify the ownership?
Actually, I think Michael can probably answer this question better than anybody.
Hi, it's Michael Beatty. Nice to be here this evening. Thank you for hearing our cases for the Ford slips. As far as I know, and John Sayati maybe also be able to answer this as well, but the piers that are actually limited common areas that are really owned by each individual unit owner. So they're not part of the overall general common areas. They're defined differently. So as soon as any owner of one of the piers went in after the project was built and they changed their pier in any manner, they took on full responsibility to it. And nobody else has the ability to use any one pier in front of a house other than the property owner that's right there. So I believe, and I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that the individual property owners each own effectively their limited common area or their piers differently than they own their share of the common area of the typical common elements like the parking lot. And as Scott said earlier, they're responsible for maintaining them, rebuilding them, fixing them. As soon as they have done any changes to it, they're their responsibility.
And
that's
does
the way
the
we've
HOA,
operated.
do they require HOA approval to do any of the changes?
So we have, as a matter of practice, have gone back to the HOA and gotten approval for these, but not as total common areas, as limited common areas. So we have gone back, and there was a letter from the HOA saying the HOA approves for these changes.
The fact that it's termed limited common area element or whatever, it implies to me it's still not an ownership thing. It's an exclusive right.
Yeah, I do not know the answer to that.
No, I'm not a lawyer either.
From memory, that's what I believe it's called, limited common areas. But they're defined differently than the common areas in the project, and they're treated differently. So all of the properties, even though the whole thing was a condominium regime, it was, I believe, what they originally called a landominium when it was done in the 70s. And the property owners effectively own their lots, just like it's a fee simple ownership. It has title insurance on it, and then effectively control the waterway in front of their properties as a limited common area that attaches to the bulkhead. And the bulkhead was a common area.
So the individual homeowners policy insures their own piers for liability or what have you. So that would be an indicia of ownership if they do. If not,
so I can tell you, we own a number of the units there. We also own unit 7, which is right next door to this unit. That's a single family house. And that unit actually has its insurance. It's totally separately insured. So some of the units, the townhouses have common insurance shared together. They were built by the original developer. And the 2 single family homes have separate insurance. And I don't know off the top of my head, and we could again check, and someone else on the phone may have that answer, but I assume that policy covers the pier liability as well. That's a common area or common policy by the condominium owners. Our policy, we have a separate policy on unit 7 that's a totally separate insurance policy that covers our docks and properties.
So John,
Mr. Butler, I'm sorry, excuse me. If you've noticed on my drawing, you'll see the property line running between units 1 and 6, not touching the bulkhead. It's kind of behind the bulkhead a little bit. But then when you get to unit 7, which is Michael's property, that goes right to the right to the bulkhead. So Michael owns number 7, which is a fee simple riparian lot, but it's still part of the association.
But probably for Title 15, then the property boundary would be right there. It would either be at each individual unit, but I'd be comfortable wrapping them all together and making the shoreline that we're bisecting include all those exclusive. I mean, it seems ambiguous here, and I don't think we need to get a legal interpretation necessarily. But Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we can just treat it all as one property. And because that's better to bring that shoreline longer, to there. And it seems like that's a reasonable thing to do because it's kind of, one set of property with separate limited use.
I agree with that, John, provided in whatever finding we make, I think we should a provision that, that it is not necessarily an acknowledgement or approval that these lateral lines are accurate or attendant to the individual properties. I mean, we just don't know, and we're not real estate lawyers either. So I wouldn't be comfortable with someone coming back on, in a couple of years saying, you verified that was the lateral line for my property. But I would like, as you requested, more amplification on the lateral line for, at the southernmost end.
So Scott, you'll go from the point of that triangle, I think, to let's make sure we know what the shore intersections are, to the point by 7 Southgate, where that property begins.
Okay.
And you'll go to the other side of Southgate Ave for the other shoreline. And then you'll bisect that. Does that make sense? Does that seem appropriate?
That works for me.
Okay.
Minor point of clarification, in our packages for the Fields application, there was a drawing pertinent to the Fields application of a boat lift, but there doesn't seem to be anything in the application that indicates they're requesting a boat lift. Can you clarify that?
One.
Are they or are they not?
Number 3, Fields. They are not. I apologize about that. So that would need to be removed. Wait a minute.
Sheet 6 of 9 is a requested boat lift.
And that's funny because for some reason my packet doesn't have sheet 6 of 9. So it's actually missing from my packet. So somebody must have taken it out and not renumbered the sheets, realizing there was no boat lift. Okay.
I will. Anyway, that's a minor thing, but that is not included in the application.
Okay.
So John, do I hear you make a motion that we postpone this until next month pending submission of the requested information?
Well, we're doing that with all of our new applications, right?
Yes, I mean, we're not deliberating on any of these tonight.
Right.
And if there's, for Mr. Beatty, if there's any clarification of whether we're really dealing with individual properties or one property that is owned by the HOA, we would appreciate that also. That would affect however we phrase whatever we decide.
We certainly will look into that and get information back to you through Scott Milkey.
So we will consider this and deliberate on these applications or application next month. So with that, have we any additional information submitted for the 2 applications that we heard last month for Dan and also Mr.
Yeah, gee, Carl Course, who's the engineer for 212 Norwood Road, is on the call now.
Okay.
If you're willing to go back to that case.
Yes. Okay. Let's first of all, let me thank all of the Southgate Court participants for their, their assistance, and you're dismissed as we go back to consider the Stinson application 212 Norwood Road.
Mr. Godley,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Godley, I need to ask a question.
Sure.
In all of these applications, we know we only did one presentation, but do we want to put the exhibits in for all of the applications?
In all of the applications, the staff report is the application is the first exhibit that's admitted, and the staff report is the second that is admitted.
Okay.
Does that cover it, Tammy? Any other questions?
That covers it. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you for correcting me. Okay, Mr. Corse, are you on? Yes.
I am. Can you hear me okay?
I'm going to swear you in if it's okay. Do you swear to tell the truth of the court words to the best of your ability upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Sorry to be tardy.
No, that's okay. So John, you want to pick it up from here and ask your questions?
Yes, thank you for coming in. I was trying to understand the submission that you sent that Kevin Scott passed on to us. So I think what you added to this drawing is the lines that have degree angles marked on them. There's one that says 60 degrees and one that says 252 degrees.
Depends on the direction you're going, obviously.
Right.
The one that's going 252, I believe, is going downward. 60s are up. Yeah, and so and then bisecting those angles, and I added the 40-foot offset for the public road as well.
Mm-hmm. So I was saying earlier when you weren't on the call that it looks to me like the bisect. When I look at that property line extended beyond that vertex between those two lines, it looks to me that is pretty close to a bisect of that very oblique angle, and we're still looking at two oblique angles.
Do you mind if I share the screen and show it?
Yeah,
because that way we can kind of work on it.
Yeah, if you have it, I'm not able to share it, so if you can, that'd be great.
Is that able to be seen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about this property corner here.
Yes, yes, but the property corner is back from there, right? Yeah, that's kind of curious. The
well, it's pretty typical for the deeds to go out into the water, right? So this is the point that I'm looking at, which is at mean high water.
Yeah. Okay.
And
which is where the ladder line should come from, right? Or where does it come from?
That's a good question. It's the property corner, but if it needs to come from there, I can modify it. It doesn't look like
the property corner is up there further.
Yeah, the property corner is out in the water, which is pretty, I mean, in terms of a deed, I guess this is really the current instantaneous property corner right here.
So it's the shoreline has receded since this property was.
Yeah, and also the 40-foot public right-of-way has a pretty serious dip in it. Erosion dip in it that's affecting, this angle here.
So
that's what
I guess my concern then is looking at this is the vertex between the two lines should be where the ladder line starts. Now the question is it where you drew it or should it be out in the water? I don't even,
I'm sorry. You mean what line are you talking about in particular? At the property corner?
So you draw two lines, going one along the property and one along the adjacent property to the points at which they intersect the shoreline. Is kind of the wording, I think, of highlight.
Right. Exactly. So from here down to a long distance downward from there.
So.
I see what you're saying. So you're saying that this 60-degree line should come from here. Oh, it does. Yeah. Okay. This is just
But the ladder line also comes from there, the way
Yeah, you're correct. So this line that I've drawn here, which is at negative 30 degrees and then stops at 25 feet and becomes negative 22 degrees.
Hello.
This line, that intersection needs to occur back here.
right. So is that, I didn't see the degrees on there. I don't know how to do the math. Is that a bisect of the 60 degrees and the
I'm sorry.
It is.
52?
It's a bisect of the 252 and the 60 degree.
Okay.
And so, yes, you're correct. I put the beginning of that line in the wrong place. Would you like me to revise that and send that to you?
Well,
I don't know if it's going to make all that much difference. But
no, it would make a very slight difference. It would change maybe slightly where that 25-foot modification is. But
right.
The reason why I would like to have it correct in the record is to not have it, if anybody ever looks back at this, to not have that ambiguity of the shoreline lines that are used to generate the ladder line. That vertex is not where the ladder line's anchored.
Are you guys going to be on this call, on this meeting for a while? Do you have more on the agenda? Or is it something I can, I mean, if you didn't have it entered into the record tonight, you'd have to postpone, right?
Well, John, it's up to you. I think since it's not material to the actual construction, I think we could probably approve it subject to the submission of the amended lateral line.
I would support that as well.
Well, let's see, John, how
That
do you
sounds
feel
good.
about
That sounds good to me. I would support that motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll email it to Kevin tomorrow and you'll have it on the record.
Okay. Then John, you want to make the motion or you want me to make the motion?
Will you just sort of phrase the motion? Why don't you go ahead and make it?
Okay. I make a motion, we approve this application subject to the submission of an amended and accurate calculation of the lateral line as Mr. Butler suggested.
I'll second that.
Move, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this application is approved. Thank you, Mr. Corse, for joining us.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. And lady.
Thank you, and for the clarification. And John, thank you for insisting on the clarification. So we now move back to Lafayette Avenue, and Mr. Larian, are you, oh, hi, Dan, sorry. Were you able to obtain the information that?
Gene, I just forwarded you an email from Dan Larian to all of the board members with an exhibit that Dan sent to me.
Well, that's a challenge. John, are you able to find that?
I'm opening it. Yeah. You know, I could probably share that if that was.
Yeah, I could share it.
Okay. Would you do
Yeah, that would be very helpful to me.
John, are you gonna share it?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Scott.
All right. Okay. I'm on my phone and I can't find it now.
All right, I can do that. Just hang on a second.
Modern technology, huh?
Yeah.
So Dan, on the new calculation, according to my tiny little iPhone, it looks like the line intersects with the second piling back.
That's the existing piles, Gene. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, the second existing pile back, which means that the location of the lift would be far inside that under its current location.
That's correct. So
So it looks like visually to me.
Here you go.
If you look at the 129 Lafayette, you look at the property line, it's a solid line, then a dashed line and a solid line. It goes from property line to property line. And then when you put a 90-degree square on that, that's the red line. You see the red line is the square line. And then when you go over to the park and you go from property line to property line, you've got that hard black line and the double dotted line. That's the property line. And then when you put a square on that line, that's the other red line. And so then when you bisect those two 90-degree points, you've got the lateral line that we put in that goes right through that one piling. And I know the scale on the 1 inch is hard to see those pilings, but that's as close as we can figure it. And
I found it. Anybody see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the illusion to me is it's the intersection of the red lines, not the double dotted lines.
Right. Well, the double dotted lines are the line that goes from property line to property line, and then you put a 90-degree square on that to get the red line at each intersection point of those two property lines, and then you bisect between those two, and that's where we get that lateral line. And is that okay, John? Does that make sense?
I'm trying to figure out let's see, confused at what's on my computer, but oh, I see.
I'm showing you the property line.
Yeah.
I'm showing you the
So
90-degree line, and then I show you the lateral line. It's a bisection of those two red 90-degree lines relative to the property line at 90 degrees.
I'm trying to figure out the geometry
I didn't call the
of what
angle
you
out.
described there.
But what I did is, if you go from that intersecting property corner between the park and Lafayette, you measure out 30 feet, measure out 30 feet on both of them, and you break 90 degrees and measure over to the lateral line. The distance is the same, and that's the only way I can check it tonight. I don't have a protractor here to check the angle.
I see. So I was just trying to figure out that trick that you're pulling. It's a neat way of cheating on a
with a 90-degree
bisection without having a protractor. Yeah.
Right. I'm just doing it with a 90-degree square because if we come down the red line 30 feet, on both red lines 30 feet, break 90 degrees to that red line over to the lateral line, the distance should be the same on each side of it, and that's what I'm coming up with. But again, whatever you think we need beyond this, I will provide, but I don't have the way to do it tonight.
Well, could we, yeah, and it goes right through that piling, that shows, it kind of relates to the drawing that you had where you have the lift and it's well off of there.
Yes, sir.
I'm just a little bit uncomfortable with not understanding the 90-degree thing, but that's all right. So, okay.
John, do you need additional information? I mean, I have a feeling that you have a discomfort with the calculations, but you don't have a particular concern about approval of the application.
Yeah, if we just had the degrees of that, like if you could,
On both sides.
we could just make it pending or something that you should provide the degrees on both sides of that to confirm that that's,
John, why don't we, is it okay with you? We like the application before. We approve this application upon the condition of getting the submission with the degrees of the angles submitted, provided they're equal degrees.
Bisect. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree
Then
with that.
I move we approve this application, provided we obtain the information that John requested of the calculation of the degrees of the bisected angle, and that those degrees would be numerically the same.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. So
Thank
that, and Dan, also, the board always appreciates your cooperation and your helpfulness. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I have one question for you, Gene.
Sure.
With this new way of doing things, after tonight, is there still a 30-day proof of facts and a 30-day appeal period before the permit could be issued? So in 60 days from now, technically, if we had state federal approval and we had approval from the Port Wardens, we could apply for the building permit?
I think that's true, but Kevin,
Dan, they'll, on May 25th, which is the date of the next meeting, they'll adopt their written findings on this.
Okay,
And then at that point, once you've provided your state and federal authorizations to me, then we'll process the paperwork for the permit.
okay,
And of course, there is everything subject to appeal. So if somebody wanted to appeal at the circuit court, they would have the right to do so. But that doesn't stop you from proceeding with permits.
okay. So we could work during the appeal period if we felt comfortable with it.
Correct. You don't have to wait until the appeal period runs out.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
thank you. The next item is to, in regard to the amendments to the Board of Port Wardens Rules of Procedure. Those were posted after the Port Wardens went into closed session and considered them. And Kevin, have there been any comment on that?
No, there has not. They've been posted on the city's website for more than 2 weeks. 2 weeks is the requirement currently. They have been posted and we've received no comments on them.
That being the case, I would move that the board approve the amendments that we considered to the rules of procedure of the board. Do I have a second? Willie,
I'll
second.
second that.
Favor? All in favor? Aye. It's
Aye.
unanimous. Is there any other business to come before the board? If not, I declare us adjourned until May the 25th at 7 p.m. So thank everyone. And John, thank you very much for all of your effort and help.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Carrie, we didn't call on you tonight, so you're lucky. We'll send your emails instead. But thank everybody for
I
your
look forward to it.
participation.
Thank you. Have a good evening.